What's up, everyone? Welcome to another live show of the Agents of Fandom podcast. My name is TJ Zwarich. I am your host. Couple men down today. I messed up my intro. I'm feeling a little bit lonely. Garrett has yet to see the movie we are going to be covering, and he's had a very busy weekend grinding away at agentsoffandom.com. Adam, busy day today as well. He's on the road home. He's going to be joining us shortly. As you can see, we got that no guest spot in the Twitch and YouTube chat holding it down. So shout out to those watching us live on Twitch and YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, all the good stuff. If you're listening to us on the podcast feed, thanks for doing that as well. Make sure you leave a 5-star rating, write a nice little review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. We got a very special show talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse today, and we got a very special guest, co-host of Phase Zero from comicbook.com, Aaron Perrine. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I love the energy in the chat to start this thing out where everybody keeps joking around about no guest. A close cousin of Cash Considerations joining us to talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Can't wait. Ariel, close the door. Make sure you don't ruin the movie for yourself. Okay, we're ready to go.
Agents of Fandom, we're cutting costs, you know, and so Garrett and Adam have been traded away for cash considerations. So that we can start getting our writers some nice salaries. Before we dive into the movie itself, Aaron, this has been an exciting one for you because I know as a big fan of Phase Zero, watching the rankings, you listed this as your number one most anticipated movie of 2023.
I did.
And you were at the junket, you were at the premiere, you got interviews at the red carpet. So talk to me about that experience.
So yeah, I did have it as my number one. I did take a ton of stuff for not having Guardians higher. And after Guardians 3 came out, everybody's looking at me like, uh-oh, what are you going to do? What could you possibly have happen? So to be able to go to the premiere, to actually get to go see the movie at Sony Pictures Animation at their studio and then watch it with a bunch of other media folk, I was completely blown away. It was such a good experience. We got to talk to a bunch of cool some of your favorites. Brian Tyree Henry was lovely. I freaking like can't believe I got to talk to freaking like Stephen Amell hilariously just
What the hell was
walking
he
out of
doing
nowhere.
there?
I don't know. Watching it with his kids, and that was great. Daniel Kaluuya is the coolest person on earth, apparently, just effortlessly, as you all know if you've seen the movie now. Issa Rae, I actually had to make Issa Rae belly laugh, and it's probably going on my fridge. Yeah, I was super stoked to get to talk to all the people. I got to talk to the directors again, producers, Daniel Pemberton, who works on the score. So yeah, just a successful week for us over at Comic Book. Very, very pleased with the coverage so far.
And you can find all of those interviews up on the Phase Zero YouTube page. Make sure to check them out because Aaron does an awesome job. I'm so happy you got that opportunity because you deserve it, man. You've been hyping up this movie all year, and like I'm so happy you got that experience.
I never wavered, and your patience gets rewarded a lot of time. Also, shout out to our editing team, like Eric Clements and John Mason, who like. So we shot it on like a big boy camera. So you have to send it from Burbank all the way to where we like our headquarters is. And the file sizes were immense. Eric was working on that group of interviews and getting them into a compilation for like 4.5 hours. So I was like, people, please watch. Don't have him have worked an entire day to like get the stuff together. We just like, oh, no one saw it. And they are fun too. That's the other part of it. I feel like we did a good job. I'm thrilled to talk about the movie though. It's great.
Heck yeah. And shout out to the people behind the scenes. You know, the producers never get enough credit. Shout out to Eric over at Comic Book. Ruben always doing so much work here behind the scenes. I'm working to start getting my producer on a little bit, get into the podcast producing game. I adjusted my office today, so those who are watching us on Twitch and YouTube right now and on video, they get the full show. But I got a nice couch in here now, and as Obi-Wan's hanging out, and it's because I got this huge TV right beside my computer here. Going to start doing some streaming. I'm going to be obviously Adam is holding it down with the Twitch streams right now, crushing it, doing some Red Dead Redemption 2. But as soon as Spider-Man 2 comes out, I'm going to be doing some streaming, and so I set up the couch, set up the TV, bringing the PS5 down here, and I'm so excited to play that game. You can find my interview with Najee Jeter, the voice actor for Miles Morales, up on
Oh,
agentsfandom.com. What's up?
you talked to Najee. Okay,
I
I
talked to
talked to
Najee.
Yuri Lowenthal at the premiere too. And so we got both sides of it. Like
We got to
both
take
sides.
that no guest and just bring our boys in here, bring Najee and Yuri in here, and have a
Listen,
nice little show.
Yuri was so scared of saying anything about that freaking game. I am excited to see what happens in that game. He did not really want to. He was like, I am really excited for everyone to see. And I'm like, okay, the Sony, task force is behind the corner ready to risk you away if you tell me anything you're not supposed to say to me. Okay, that's fine.
That
I
was the same
understand.
thing at the Calgary Expo is when I met Najee, and like when we were just hanging out at his booth shooting the shit. He said a few things that I was like, "Are you, are you sure you should be talking about that?" But then as soon as it was like on the record, we did our first interview, and it was about 2 to 3 minutes in, and I asked the question, and I was like, that was the ADHD. I didn't mean to ask that. I know you can't answer that. Then we just restarted the whole thing from scratch.
Yeah.
And then I tried to ask him about Spider Verse because I was like, we saw Yuri Lowenthal's character in the trailer, in some posters. What was it like for you, like kind of knowing he's going to be in this? And are you hoping you can enter this universe? And he's like, man, look how cool this person's cosplay is. And he grabs my camera, turns it over to look at an Agent Venom cosplay. And I was
Right.
like, oh, you're not talking about this
Absolutely not. No, no,
whatsoever.
no, no,
But
no.
I can't wait for that game. Yes, everybody's making fun of the way I say Calgary. I don't know. It was how I was raised to say it. And at the Calgary Expo, Anakin Skywalker himself, Hayden Christensen, said, "Hello, Calgary," and so I was vindicated. I was validated, and if Hayden Christensen's on my side, I don't really need anything else. But
Wow.
let's talk about this movie. Um, it was your most anticipated movie of 2023. Did it
Mhm.
meet your expectations?
I think it cleared it pretty easily. Because it would have been very easy, like in 2 years, to kind of mete out a very normal animated sequel to a really popular movie that kind of moved some of the elements forward. And instead, what we got was like this visual feast that really showed you that Into the Spider Verse is really the foundation on which they're building this larger, sprawling narrative. There are so many different spider people. There are so many different story concepts. There's a bunch of surprises. Someone asked in the chat like what the theater environment is. Hey Adam,
What's going on here?
what's going on? There's no harder crowd. It's like being in front of a crowd full of comedians, I guess, where you're trying to try out a new set and they're all like, like unimpressed. Like these writers, these outlets, people from Screen Rant and people from Comic Book Resources and us and IGN and Game Informer, all these places, like they've seen it all. So when they erupt into like actual clapping and yelling at stuff that happens on screen, you know that you have a winner. And there's a ton of that going on, especially like midway through. It was like a hoot and a hollering affair. And I think some of us forgot that it's only a part one. And at the end, we're like, wait, what? No! March? That's so far away. So I couldn't have asked for much more. It's very, very pleasing to have your predictions cash out.
That's perfectly like that was such well said because I think if anybody has qualms about the movie, it's the one people didn't know it was part one, and so you've seen there's a few theater reactions where people are like, "What the fuck?" at the end of the movie, and they're just absolutely devastated that they have to wait to see this continuation. And the only other complaint really is some theaters didn't turn the sound up high enough, and it seems like a lot of people got left kind of not hearing the dialogue super well because the theaters didn't have the sound mixing up there properly.
See, that confused me. In our screening, the you could hear the first bit, the first part, the intro. I don't know if I want to say exactly what happens, but I could hear all of it, and then I see all these reactions where I'm like, I couldn't hear the first 10 minutes of the movie, and I'm like, what is that about? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah,
But
apparently there was just like a different setting that it's different than most movies as to where they had to amp it up to, and a lot of theaters didn't really get the memo. I remember watching with Ava, and I said to them, I was like, I can't wait to watch this again at home with subtitles because I don't want to miss anything. But those were really it. The movie itself was such a masterpiece. Adam, you came in at a perfect time because we talked about the red carpet, we shot the shit a little bit, and now we're getting into the movie. And so, before we fully dive into spoilers, you've been writing about Spider-Man. You've been editing about Spider-Man. It's been Spider-Man Central for you for the last couple of weeks. Are you sick of it yet? Now you finally get to talk about this movie now. What'd you think?
Well, first off, I'm happy to be here. I'm sorry for the delayed absence, Aaron. It's nice to meet you. I think
Nice to
the
meet you.
last show that you were on was like one or two before I joined the podcast team full time. So just awful timing on that. But I'm happy to be here. It's good to meet you. But as for the Spider-Man stuff, one, I could never ever be tired of Spider-Man. Like you ask me that again in 6 months if I'm writing about Spider-Man every week. No, I'm not tired of Spider-Man. I could never be, especially with this amazing movie that we just got, and then this promo for Spider-Man 2, everything. I could not. I'm fully embracing the Spider-Man era right now. But to avoid the spoilers, to like just general broad thoughts, I've seen this movie twice, and I fucking loved it both times. It's like a life-changing experience to just sit there and soak in and watch. Like, and my only complaint, we'll get into this a little bit, I'm sure. My only one complaint about the movie that dings it a little bit is at the very end, but the first 2 hours and 10 to 15 minutes, I think it's just an absolute bona fide masterpiece, and I cannot wait to talk with you guys about it.
And we'll get into kind of ratings and everything later on as well, but that is kind of where I had to have some introspection and figure out how I want to rate it because I found it very difficult. And I was just like a little lower on it than I think most people were. I still loved it. I thought it was absolutely incredible. But my initial rating was kind of in like the 8.5 to 9 range. And then I kind of thought about it and I realized like it's important to me to try and, as a critic, rate movies based on what they're attempting to do. It always bothers me when people are like, this movie's trash. Why? Because I didn't like it. I wanted something else. Well, that doesn't matter. It depends on what they're doing, right? And what they were doing was making a part one of a story. And my only kind of issues were like, I kind of felt like I was waiting for a third act that didn't really happen, and I just wanted like a little bit more at the end. But it was a part one. It was setting up the big third act of this trilogy that is the third movie. And so just based on that, I kind of switched back into like the 9.5-10 range because in terms of what their goals are, they kind of knocked it right out of the park. Starting to dive into spoilers now, I want to sort of separate this into animation, spider people, and story. So Aaron, I'll throw this to you first, and I know you have a hard out, so at any point, if you just got to start getting out of here, say, TJ, hurry the hell up so we can get your final thoughts, and then we'll get out of here. But first thing I want to touch on is the animation, because this is the one thing where everybody has a consensus. It doesn't matter. Some people argue about the ending, whether they liked it or not, but this was an absolute spectacle. It's something like we've never seen before. What do you think of the animation?
I mean, when they were doing interviews with like The Wrap and Empire, like almost a year ago now, like probably 6, 7 months ago, they were saying like there's 5 different universes and each universe has a different art style and we're really pushing out the boat. And last time, yes, there were elements of, hey, these other universes, like the characters are animated differently, but we're still in Miles's. And I was like, well, is that really going to be like enough to like just hang this on? And then they were saying, oh, there's a 6th universe that we can't tell you guys about, but you'll all flip when you see that one. And I feel like they undersold it. Like you had, I think it was Chris Miller like tweeting out like, there were animation things that we're doing on Spider-Verse 2 that are going to make the first movie look quaint. And he retweeted it this weekend like, I told you all. I told you. And I'm like, you can go ahead and take your home run trot. You earned that. You absolutely blast this one out of the park. Like every single one of these is bonkers. Every single frame, there's something else that you're gonna pay attention to. That's why I'm seeing it again in like 45 minutes. I want to sit there and see it. And this is like a first ballot going to buy the Blu-ray movie for this household because you're not gonna be able to, even after 3 times, there'll probably be other stuff that I see like. I don't know if we're in like spoiler territory yet.
Yeah,
there's a detail early on when they're doing the Spot's origin, right? That foreshadows literally the thing from the end that I did not realize upon first thing, and because it's in black and white, you can easily miss it. But if you go back through the movie, when the spider comes into play, there's a thing where you see young Prowler sitting there, and he's right there. We got Wakanda Forever again, where he's like right there in open space in the first 30 minutes of the movie, and you're like, oh well, I didn't notice that, and it's totally hilarious. I'm like, man, they put so much detail, everything. It's like one of those really satisfying domino videos on TikTok where somebody knocks it down, it all comes down nice, and it's like colorful and great, and then nothing misses. I'm like, yeah, this is great. I could sit all day and talk about how cool Mumbatan looked, or finally seeing a watercolor version of Gwen Stacy's world brought to fruition in live action, or like, Miguel's weird society if we let everything, if Bernie Sanders won universe that he lived in. It was great. I was very impressed all the way across the board. And Spider-Punk just in general, because they're telling you stuff now that like all 5 parts of him are animated at different BPMs. Like somehow, like his guitar, like half of him, his head and his legs are animated differently, like Miles was in the first movie. Because I'm sure you guys know about like him gradually being animated better as he becomes better at being Spider-Man. And I'm like, this is insane. I'm like, the coffee table book is going to do numbers. I want it. I'm gonna pre-order it. I'm about it.
It's absolutely next level stuff what they do, and obviously, so they set a record for most animators ever on an animated project before. And it's so funny when you see people on Twitter now that this movie comes out, and there'll be like frames and like single shots, and people will be like, that's my frame from Spider-Verse, and it's like, that's my one shot, because there's so much incredible detail to all of this stuff. That's literally what it took, is everybody gets one. It's like that Spider-Man thing from Family Guy. Everybody gets one. Everybody got one frame to work on, and that's kind of how they did it. And it was so incredible. I'm so happy you brought up the watercolor aspect of Gwen's universe, because this is something I didn't notice upon watching, but I saw it on the internet afterwards, and then the Mary Sue has a great article up about this as well, and you see the Protect Trans Kids flag in Gwen's room, but there was so much more to it than that I didn't realize. And the discourse that I found is a lot of people suggesting that either Gwen's character either may be a trans woman in this series, or it's a very strong allegory for the trans experience, where when she's talking with her dad, they shift it to the colors of the trans flag. It's blue, it's white, and it's pink. Gwen's dad has the pin on his cop thing, the trans flag right on it. And their argument, check out the article, and there's lots of Twitter threads on it as well, because I don't want to kind of butcher the parallels of the argument. Obviously, it's not my experience, and so I don't know the parallels and the symbolism perfectly, but check out the article, and there's some interesting Twitter threads on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is literally representation all up and down, like the entire thing. Like I caught some of the threads about that and found it interesting, kind of flagged it in the beginning too, because all like the telling your parents and stuff really maps well onto those kind of allegories. But like, you could tell that there were all kinds of people working on this thing. Like when I talked to directors, they talked about remaking or like doing their own spin on Spider-Man India, and how having South Asian people on staff really enriched their way of doing that, and some of the jokes and like how they would go about it. I mean, you have a bunch of black people.
This is where Britain stole all of our stuff.
Yeah, that's where Britain stole all of our stuff. I'm like, yeah, exactly. I was like, no matter what universe we're in, unfortunately, Layla, I love you. But it's really kind of like, this thing really exists. Like maybe it's like taking 5 years and just really pouring over it in excruciating detail to make sure that you can like really get all the stuff in there, or just having the right team. But it's just staggering. I really am impressed on like, this Spider-Man really is for everybody, Like, it is something we can all really glean from Peter Parker's story, or any Spider-Person story. So, yeah, I don't know. What is going on over here in the chat? That is so funny.
Release the cake cut for Miguel O'Hara's ass because that man looked good, and we need to see more of Oscar. Like, shout out to Oscar Isaac because he is so attractive that they went out of their way to make Miguel O'Hara as caked up and attractive as they possibly could. We are fresh off a very wild and spectacular movie of visuals in Avatar 2 The Way of the Water, which Adam, I believe you're the one who wrote the review up on agentsfandom.com for, and you said very high things. Not very high things. What does that even mean? You had very high praise. That's what I was trying to go for. Now, Garrett always makes up a great point of how it's so difficult to compare live action things to animation, but fresh off of a movie that some people call the most visually spectacular movie ever, did we just top it?
I think so, yeah. But I'm kind of a mind with Garrett because it's such a hard comparison to make because like I know technically Avatar is like an animated film because like none of it's really real. Pandora's not a real place. The Na'vi are not real people. But it's like it still feels like when you're watching it, like this feels like maybe this is happening, could be happening on another planet. Like if you use your imagination, and like that's not to say that animation doesn't, but it's really hard. My brain doesn't work in that way to compare those medians, and like I wonder if one is better. But like if I was gonna do it, like this is absolutely the best animated movie. It's better than Avatar, and it's the best animated movie in terms of its animation of all time. It's not even close either. Like we saw Mario earlier this year, which was an awesome animated movie that like did some really incredible things with its animation. And then if you give this movie a 10, Mario's like a 1, a 2, maybe compared to what this movie does. It's unreal. It's like it really is like a work of art. Like the people like you guys were both talking about, they spent so much time and it had to have just been grueling. Like there was so many shots that I'm watching and I'm just like I think like the intro alone before we even get to Gwen, I've seen this movie twice and both times I'm sitting here thinking this had to have taken them like weeks, months, how just to cobble together all this stuff in the intro, much less everything throughout the entire movie. It's just like, and we talked about it before on our preview pod about they've earned this trust from us, like with how much care that they've shown from the first one, and then like all in the interviews and stuff building up throughout all the promotion. So it's like the things they've done with this is spectacular. It's unreal. I can't even believe it exists, and I'm almost worried if I should even be expecting them to top this in the third one because in my head I'm like, it's not possible. It's not possible to do anything better. But then again, you watch the first one, you're like, this sets a new standard for animation, and then they blow the first one out of the water with this one. So I'm like, it's just my mind is blood. The animation is just really what stands out the most. But it's a true work of art. This is like giving Picasso like a paintbrush and a canvas and telling him to go to work. That's what they did with this movie. It's unreal.
They set a new precedent that's just absolutely incredible. And obviously they have some things still stuck up their sleeve for Beyond the Spider-Verse. To me, I don't think they need to level up the animation necessarily for Beyond as much as the story needs to take a level up. Like this one, it almost felt like as much as the story was a sequel, it felt a little bit like a second origin to something new a little bit. And so I think the third one kind of has to be really hard hitting in that regard. But from an animation perspective, Aaron, I'm wondering if you like know any more about this than we do in terms of the process of how far along they are with everything. But like part 2 is coming out in March. Beyond the Spider-Verse is supposed to come out in March. I've seen a lot of people on socials be like, there's no way. This is the most incredible thing ever. There's no way this doesn't get delayed because they won't finish in time. But I think a lot of part 2 and 3 were worked on together. I'm wondering on what's your take on if you think it will get released in March.
Well, they've been very, very, very obvious and like real about like we ain't trying to talk about 3. I agree with you. I think that really what functionally happened was when because remember they only green lighted the second one after the first one did so well, and I think they turned in a movie that was like huge. Kofi says this too, and I tend to agree. Where like at least the story that they turned in was so massive that they were like, man, I gotta cut this in half. Like it's too much. It would be 5 hours, 4 hours. And by the way, I would sit through 4 hours of Across the Spider-Verse Beyond the Spider-Verse double feature. I hope that they do it at freaking like at Draft House here or somewhere. I'll sit through that for sure. But for normal people, they're probably like, hey, that's a little bit much. Especially with how intense and amazing the animation was. Your hair would just be on fire, like coming out of the theater. Like, what did I just see? So they've obviously, I think, been working on it, but they don't want to tell us too much about it. Also, I can tell you that the director said they're holding Spider People back for the third one. Like, there's like things that they were thinking about. They were like, we're saving this for the end. And I'm like, after seeing, I'm like, what could possibly you've done all of it, almost all of it anyway. Like, unless Tom, yeah, it's just like
me.
yeah, it's TJ.
Spider-
It's just TJ.
Wait.
Spider-Man Canada coming in.
Where's
now.
Spider-
Exclusive
Canada.
Agents of Fandom scoop. Agent Spider-Man of Canada will be in and Beyond the Spider-Verse.
To be real, that was the one that I was kind of disappointed I didn't see was, and I messaged you this, Aaron, after I saw Stephen Amell at the red carpet, I was like, you know who Stephen Amell's voice sounds very similar to? The voice actor for Peter Parker in the 90s animated Spider-Man series. I think he could do that voice pretty well. Is that who he's playing in this movie?
Right.
And then there was no 90s Spider-Man. So that's like, if he's not in the third, I'm going to be a little disappointed.
Him, the Japanese Spider-Man with the robot, Tom, Silk, and maybe like one more. And I think that's like, I can't think of it. I'm sure people are in the comments, like, going to be in the comments, are going to be messaging you guys like, you forgot this person, you know. There's so many of them. But yeah, like, we're getting down to like dream casting. You never thought you'd see these people on screen. Like I said that about when they said, oh, yo, Dan Kaluuya's in this Spider-Punk. I'm like, are you kidding me? In a freaking like majority released like major motion picture, you're gonna get to see him and Spider-Man India, both things from when I was like in like high school. Like I can't imagine. So I still think we're headed for that. I'm more confident than ever that the end of the third one is going to be live action Miles Morales. I've never felt better about it. I've been saying on Phase Zero for months now, and I feel better about it than I ever did. Thank you, Amy Pascal, for being like, yeah, sure. It's all coming. And I'm like, that's weird. I had people messaging after that happened. They're like, the reason you can't say anything is because he's in. And I'm like, no, go watch the movie. And luckily I didn't have to be like a liar. There's enough stuff that we've already been given that we would be remiss if they just rolled out exactly what we've gotten to this point for part 3 and their weird Sinister Six tease, and that's just the third movie. But you know there's going to be something more drastic. You know there's going to be something more drastic. I would say I agree with Mastertainment from New Rockstars. I talked to Eric a couple days ago, and we were both kind of like on the same wave that like it feels like they're saving Tom for the end too. That seems like an absolute slam dunk. Whether it's animated, which would be amazing and crazy, or if it's just Who Framed Roger Rabbit and he's literally there talking to them, would be nuts and worth it, I think, just on its face to be like, what? So it can go anywhere, a bunch of places. I whatever you give me, whatever scraps and apple cores you decide to give me for part 3, I will gladly eat them. Like you said, Adam, I think they've earned our trust. It could be stick puppets in part 3, and I'd be like, go on, you have my attention.
I mean, hey, they knocked it out of the park with Lego.
That was the biggest thing of the writer screening. Everybody was like throwing stuff in the air, excited when that happened. They were all like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "What? Okay, we're only like 45 minutes in. Like, what else could possibly happen? Like, that's not like, oh, look at the end. It's like, oh yeah, midway through. There you go." And J. Jonah Jameson is always J.K. Simmons, no matter what.
Always.
He's a Nexus being. He's always here.
Yeah.
He's always been here.
Watch him be and end up being like one of the Watchers or something like that, or like he's I mean, he's out here interfering a lot, but just like some dude that is just literal Nexus being all powerful in the universe somewhere. The Lego thing didn't do that much for me until Miguel was like, "Thank you, Spider-Man. You're one of our best." And I just lost it at that moment.
What?
There's some theories and story things for the third one I still want to dive into later. I love the Tom call. I love the live action Miles call. I do actually think like there's so much they could do there. One, if Sony wants to do their own thing with Miles separate from the MCU until Secret Wars or something like that. I'm actually game for that, for Miles to get his own story as long as it is made well. Ideally, Kevin Feige has something to do with it, so it's made pretty well. But you know what I mean. If the Spider-Verse creators in terms of storytelling, hell yeah, give me that.
I mean, I think Lord and Miller should have outsized role in whatever they decide to do with the character from here on in. They seem to have a pretty good handle on Miles Morales, I should say.
I agree with that, 100%. And
but-
I do still have a 90s animated Spider-Man theory where maybe one of the villains that Spot kind of recruits and teams up with in this one could be a Spider Carnage, maybe voiced by Chris Pine. I think that would be really cool.
Oh, that would mess the poor boy up too. Dear God, no.
Yeah. And then, so they got to bring in 90s animated Spider-Man to help fight him because he's been there, done that before. But I want to transition into all the different Spider people because, like you mentioned, Aaron, Spider-Man India, Spider-Punk, two absolute highlights. Adam, among all these different cameos, which were the ones that gave you the Leo DiCaprio pointing meme? Oh, he's there! And which were the ones that you just kind of like enjoyed the most that you think added to the story?
So the one that, and this is weird because we knew it was coming, but the one that gave me the pointing meme, I don't even care, was just seeing Yuri's Spider-Man PS4 and like that just because he just means so much to me and that game and that character, everything. I just love him so much that like even though I knew it was coming, when they were walking through the thing, I knew I was like, okay, this is when they're gonna show him. So I was like sitting up in my seat. I was like, I know he's coming. I like screamed out loud. I was so excited, even though I'd seen him in the trailers. So it's got to be like just pure joy and excitement. It's got to be Yuri. But the two really that I enjoyed the most, I think like a lot of people, Spider-Punk was just incredible. The whole when he was holding Mayday and he's like taking a dump on the establishment. I hear that. That was just an all-time line. Spider-Man India was great. Miguel was great. I mean, if I've got to pick out three, those are the three. But I mean, they did such a good job with everybody and telling like a unique story for everybody. They had 2.5 hours. And I feel like we got to know like a lot of the Spider people that were in it that you could tell weren't just designed to be like a flash away, like, hey, we did this for you. Like the ones that had like any kind of part in the story, like I felt like they even like Ben O'Reilly, he got like a little part in there at the end. We got to see him cook a little bit and tell some jokes. Like there wasn't anybody that I feel like they didn't handle well, they didn't do a good job with. So, but for the ones that I think I enjoyed the most, I've got to put Hobie at the top. Spider-Punk was incredible, and then right close behind him though too was Spider-Man India. I hope we get to see. I know we're going to get to see them in Beyond the Spider-Verse, but I'm really really excited to see more of them.
Let me reconnect real quick because I'm gonna get in the car, but I want to keep talking. So hold on, I'll be right back.
Deal. Sounds good. Sounds good. I agree. Spider-Punk for me was by far the best one. My favorite part was when Miguel was like. Hobie, you're not helping. Good. That was good. I love that so much. We're back to no guests, but Aaron's gonna be bringing it back to us soon. I wanted more from Ben Reilly. I wanted more from the Scarlet Spider. His animation was probably my favorite of all of them. He looked so good. He looked so cool. And to be fair, that's basically the reason why I love Scarlet Spider so much is I love that costume. It's just so cool. I cosplayed it before. I think the picture is actually behind me right now. Yeah, you can see it right there. Bop. Those watching on video, on Twitch, on YouTube, hit that like button, and you can see it right there. I thought I wanted more. I wanted him to be a little bit more than just the comedic relief. And just based on the kind of Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider character they're going with, it also doesn't really seem like he'd be the type of guy that would team up with Miguel. Based on what Miguel was wanting to do there, he'd be more on the opposite side. But all the different Spider people were so cool. It was so awesome to see Yuri. I can't wait to see the different ones we're going to be getting in the future here as well. But let's talk about the story itself. That was one of the things that kind of surprised me the most, and I don't even really know how to word this without sounding like, I saw this, I can't believe other people didn't. But the twist of Miles being on Earth 42, that didn't really hit for me all that hard. Like, I thought it was cool, but it was basically as soon as he went, I was like, he's he's not in his universe, right? They've been doing that big 42 all over the spider the entire time. They just talked about how it wasn't from his universe, and we know their spider powers are what the DNA is coded to. He's gone to another universe. I did just feel a little bit like I was waiting for that third act, which I'm assuming when I finally get to watch the third movie and I watch these two together, it's just gonna be like the best fucking thing ever. But I do feel like I was missing a little bit on the story overall plot as a whole. But having said that, I love the individual character arcs. Spot as a villain, how he went from butt of the joke to menacing and terrifying, I thought it was really cool. All the individual Spider people outside of wanting more from Scarlet Spider, I thought were great. Miguel's background and finding out he's from the same Earth as Peter B. Parker. They were together. They're not from the same Earth, but he went there. They were together there. That's from that Earth. I thought that was all very interesting. And then, of course, we'll touch a little bit more right after this on the multiverse of it all as well. The story left me a little bit wanting more as a whole, but each character individually, Hobie's, Spider-Man India's, Gwen's, Miles, I thought it was just chef's kiss. Perfect.
Yeah, see, you know, it was funny. I remember when we were first talking about it together, and you were talking about how a lot of the stuff, as much as you enjoyed it, you kind of saw it coming. And you know, it's one. I watch movies with people who had like it's got my brain doesn't work this way, and like in a way, like I envy you for like seeing this kind of stuff coming. But like the only thing that I predicted or that I saw like when they got to the end, um, in the new universe stuff, when the sky was green, like the sky was really really green, and I was kind of like, wait a minute, like I feel like I've seen Into the Spider Verse a bunch of times, and we spent a lot of time in Miles' universe, and this home his sky has never looked like that. Like I was like, wait, but then I was like, they don't do anything without like. Even then, I started doubting myself. Like I'm one of those people when I think I'm onto something, and like I think I'm cooking up. Like, oh wait, is this about to happen? I immediately talk myself out of it, and I'm like, oh no, I'm probably wrong because this. Like, but I'm also just not even really good at picking up on that kind of stuff. Like I watch movies with people in the theater sometimes that'll lean over to me and be like, hey, he's doing this because this, or hey, this is getting ready to happen, and then they end up being right, and I'm like, whoa, what? Like I just didn't even see it coming because that's just the way my brain works, and so it's hard for me to relate to that particular aspect, but like the story really worked for me up until the very end. I felt after the first time I watched it, I was like, I think they could have ended it 10 minutes earlier, and it hit a little harder for me. Like it seems like because on my first viewing, I was literally just so locked in. I had no idea whether we had an hour of movie left or how like I didn't even look at my phone or anything. I thought we were literally heading into the climax. Like this was like shit was getting ready to get crazy. And then the movie ends, and it was so funny because in my first showing, like I was there on a Thursday afternoon, and nobody. It was pretty quiet. I didn't really have like a rowdy theater. And then last night, y'all, my theater was pissed.
His
Some guy,
theater.
okay, Cal Gary. I don't want to hear it from you. Like people, some guys literally stood up and yelled, "What the fuck? No, 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 no!" Like just started yelling, but people were like, "Whoa, whoa, what?" Like everybody was going crazy as soon as the movie ended, and I just got up and got out of there. I knew there wasn't a post-credit scene or nothing coming. I was like, "I'm getting out of here. I don't want to hear all these angry people." But still, after two viewings for me, that's the only like dig that I give this story. I think they could have ended it 10 minutes earlier. It seems like they had a nice out right when they first realized he's in another universe, and then they spend like 5 to 10 minutes building it up, and then it just drops off, like it just ends. Like it seems like they could have ended it 10 minutes earlier. So story-wise, that's my only quarrel, but that's not enough to take it. It takes from like a 5 to like a 4.8 for me.
Yeah, that's Aaron. Something that I was. I'm gonna word my question here to make it so that you can talk without giving any spoilers, since you're in the car and I don't want you to give any away.
She appreciates it. She appreciates it.
I thought that through. No worries. And so, one of the things we talked about was like maybe you could have some qualms with the end, but the individual stories of each character was handled with so much care, and it was so incredible. How did you feel that they did there, making sure that like each of these spider people were their own person and giving each character their time to shine? I think we might have lost him. We did. He was frozen, and so I wasn't sure if it was maybe just
You
video,
need some time to think about that.
but it was an audio thing too. He's back. Did you hear the question, or did I lose you?
I got Adam back.
Oh,
It's
No.
I
Adam.
don't see TJ.
Can
And
you,
I
cutting
didn't
out.
hear the answer.
can you still hear me?
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Ruh-roh.
Well, Adam.
Okay, I got him back.
Okay.
I got you
Nice.
back.
So
Can't hear, which is a problem, of course. Okay. Did you type it to me in the chat? What the heck
Aaron,
happened?
can you hear? Aaron,
I was
can you
doing
hear
so
me?
well.
in the meantime,
Man.
um,
All right,
Adam,
yeah.
do you mind
hold on,
typing
let me
into
try
the
it
chat
again.
for
Go
me?
back
I don't
out and
have
try to
my-
get in here again.
Okay, there we go. Aaron's popping out. He's gonna pop back in. I think basically when he gets back, I'm just gonna get his final thoughts, and then we'll get him to give his socials, and then he can go enjoy the movie, and we'll start diving into our theories a little bit as well. But I'm so happy we got to have Aaron on, especially at the beginning where we just dove into his experience at the premiere and just love for this movie, because that's why I was pumped to have him on, is because he's been touting this one since day one. Like, this sequel, I remember even dating back to last year, this sequel was like number one on his list of things. I see we got his name back in the internal chat here, so we'll see if the screen pops back on classic live show things. In the meantime, make sure you follow the Agents of Fandom on socials. It's at Agents Fandom on Twitter and TikTok, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell as well. But I don't know where to go now, Adam. I don't know where to transition to. I'm being honest with you. I lost my train of thought. I had the segue we were going to next, and I kind of lost it. But in terms of each of these individual Spideys, who was your favorite? Like, who was the one that, maybe outside of Spider-Punk, because I think that's all of our favorites, but like,
Yeah.
who was your favorite new addition that we got to see a little bit?
Besides Spider-Punk, it's definitely Spider-Man India. His introduction was just great. The energy that he brought was really, really unique to what we're like familiar to seeing from other Spider-Man, and I think a lot of that was because his canon event, I think that's what they're called, his canon event hadn't happened yet. So he hasn't, become this gloom, sad Spider-Man.
The multiverse!
Because he hasn't become this gloom, like sad Spider-Man because that event hasn't happened. He hasn't experienced that same loss that everybody else has. And his intro was just incredible, especially when he's like, I'm already naturally pretty buff, so I don't want to work out because I don't want to get too big. And then giving everybody all the stuff about the chai tea and the naan bread and all that kind of stuff. Just the energy that he brought was it was really, really unique compared to what we got from everybody else. So as far as like my standout Spider-Man that I like the most, aside from Spider-Punk, because I mean, Hobie's number one, of course, but if I've got to give a number two, it's got to be Spider-Man India for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Spider-Man India was an absolute hoot. He was hilarious. All the memes of like, wow, they finally invented Spider-Man without depression were just fantastic, with obviously that being one because of how happy he was, but two mostly because of the way his canon event was implicated there. But I'm so happy you reminded me of my next point. I got distracted before, but I'm ready now. The multiverse. I saw a lot of people kind of asking on socials, like, do you feel they try to kind of retcon how the MCU did the multiverse with this? But really, I just think they expanded upon it. I thought a lot of the stuff they said was very similar. The imagery was very similar with the branches, but it was different wording. And I think it makes sense that Miguel and Spider-Man 2099 would view the multiverse differently than, say, what we understand it in our main branch of the MCU, especially when he's only concerned with the Spider People. And so whether you're calling it a absolute point, like they do in What If with Christine Palmer's death in the Doctor Strange story, whether you're calling it a canon event like they do in Spider-Verse, or a Nexus event, whatever it is, it seems like it's very similar stuff, and this is just expanding upon our understanding of the multiverse. Shout out to Damon, Agent Damon Gray, who came up with this theory that he kind of realized that for those who saw Morbius, I still haven't seen Morbius, but we've all at least seen the terrible post-credit scene, or what seems like a terrible post-credit scene, where Michael Keaton was like, I don't know why I'm here, but I think it's got something to do with Spider-Man. And it made no sense, but looking at this movie now, and what happens with, how did it start? With a vulture popping into a random universe, right? And I know Damon, I think, is writing more about this now up on agentsfandom.com. And shout out to Kofi Outlaw, host of Comic Book Nation, writer at comicbook.com. He wrote about this as well, about Damon's theory, that this movie kind of closed that plot hole. The Spider-Man that had something to do with it. It wasn't Tom Holland. It was Miles Morales, because he was also poking holes in the multiverse. All of these different things are happening, whether it be Spot and his multiversal holes being poked through, whether it be Doctor Strange's spell, whether it be Sylvie stabbing He Who Remains, etc., etc., etc. All these different things are leading towards a big Secret Wars type event. I know Sony and the MCU are different, but that seems to be coming. What did you think of the specific multiverse storytelling of it all?
First, Damon's theory on that is incredible, and that piece has been through a first round of edits. I've read it. It's a great piece, so everybody be on the lookout for that. But that post-credit scene is still terrible. That theory is right. The theory is right, and we could change like what's coming out of it. That post-credit scene is still fucking abysmal. I mean, first off, those two were never even in the same field together. Probably never even on set together. I mean, I just rewatched it again before I was reading his article, and like the cuts back and forth are insanely weird. And then I was thinking a bunch of guys like me and you could team up, do some good. Like what? Who fucking wrote that? Somebody got paid thousands and thousands of dollars to write that. Well, maybe not that much, given that the writers now are on strike. You know, they probably didn't get paid enough to write it. But that post-credit scene.
AI wrote that because the writers weren't available, and that's why it didn't work out very well.
That's why we're on strike, because AI wrote that post-credit scene. There's your theory right there. Like multiverse stuff wise, though, I mean, you hit on it great. This was an incredible movie, and I'll say I don't think that this really takes away from anything the MCU's doing. To me, I look at it like same idea but different visionaries to kind of execute it. One, like when the timeline branch came up, I was like, oh shit, that's like literally what we saw in the end of Loki. That like the ultimate timeline or whatever it's called, like it looks the exact same. Like, but there's also so many other things like traveling between universes. Maybe that's because they're using different devices and stuff that is different. But to me, neither one of them takes away from the other one. I think you made a great point the other day. I believe it was you yesterday or day before that said the reason things could look so much different is because like in the MCU, they're traveling a lot more with magic, and that's kind of how they're doing their multiversal travel. And in this movie, it's all technology from 2099. That's how they're doing all this. It's not Doctor Strange helping them transfer through dimensions or anything. So multiverse-wise, I mean, they did an incredible job, like an even better job in the first one. You know, we got to go through and see all these different universes that they did an awesome job touching on with different animation styles, like especially Gwen's at the very end when her and her dad are having that conversation and the camera's panning back and forth, and it's like they're both like whether it's the lighting or whatever that's supposed to be, like how her dad, like one shot he looks like he's wearing pink pants and like a green shirt, and then next time he just looks like he's wearing like the blue pants and a white. That was just mesmerizing. Like, I can't wait for this movie to come out on digital or whatever, and to just like watch these scenes and pause and just stare at the screen, because it was so beautiful. And the way they did that was like telling story. Like the way they differentiated the universe was like the animation style, which personally, like the stuff in Doctor Strange, you know, kind of putting grass on the buildings doesn't really work as and you know, go on red and stop on green. That doesn't really work as well for me as something like this. I know it's a little harder to differentiate when you don't have the animation styles like they have in this movie. You know, it's a little bit more of a challenge, but I thought they did an absolutely incredible job with all the multiverse stuff. And I'd love to talk to anybody that had complaints about it, because, you know, frankly, I think those are unfounded.
I agree. I think they added to it 100%. They made some things make a lot more sense. They also added in some new wrinkles that don't necessarily contradict anything. The one aspect of the multiverse that I'm going to say I have a qualm about is storytelling wise, and this isn't necessarily a qualm yet. It's a qualm that if it doesn't, I just said qualm so many times, I don't feel like that's a real word anymore. Qualm. Anyways, having Insomniac Spider-Man there, having Yuri Lowenthal's Spider-Man there. Obviously, this could take place way after the PlayStation Spider-Man games, or maybe it could play into it if those games eventually branch into a multiverse story, whether that be in Spider-Man 2 or future games that come, because there's no way they're done telling these stories. These games make too much money. And so it has to branch into that at some point. And it almost makes, like, and if it doesn't, it gives me that, like, well, what the hell? You're going to tell me that this Peter Parker met and saw a Miles Morales that's causing all types of shit, and he's not going to talk to his Miles Morales about this? Causing all types of shit with the multiverse. He's part of this group, so that's probably how he views it. And so that is definitely something that I think needs to be addressed in the future, because although it is a really cool nod, I'm with you. I did the same thing. I saw him and I was like, there he is! Especially when we got to hear his voice. That was the part that got me so excited. But I feel like if they're including him, they have to do something with it. And even though it was a fun nod, if they don't, I'm gonna be a little upset about that. But in general, I thought the multiversal aspect was absolutely fantastic. I loved what they did with it. In terms of all the other Easter eggs, people in chat, if you have more that you want us to bring up, let us know. Twitch chat's going really active. YouTube, we got one of my guys, Kick Cloud Kicker. I know I see him from the Roto Grinders chat all the time when I'm doing content over there. Wanted to know if the movie was good. I don't know if they're still in YouTube, but we got the Twitch chat popping. So if there's more Spideys you want us to talk about or any other Easter eggs, let us know. One of the reasons I think I wasn't really surprised by the big twist was because with all the 42 stuff, I was talking to Ava, who has become a massive Blue Jays fan. Big baseball fan now. We always talk about the Jays. And so I was like, hey, do you remember that movie we watched with Chadwick Boseman about Jackie Robinson? That's why that's 42. Like, that's a nod to Jackie Robinson being the first black player to play in the MLB, and Miles Morales being the first black Spider-Man. Like, that's what that's a nod to. And then so with all the 42 stuff, I was like, they're in Earth 42. It was really cool to see Josh Keaton and Spectacular Spider-Man. I know for a lot of people that is their Spider-Man cartoon. For me, it's the 90s one, but for a lot of our younger viewers, and honestly, just everybody, because people love that series, that was really great to see that. But probably the coolest one was Childish Gambino as the Prowler in live action, popping his way into that movie. And that's something we've had teased since Spider-Man Homecoming. Childish Gambino helped inspire the creation. Donald Glover helped inspire the creation of Miles Morales. He was the very first person to ever voice Miles Morales in animation. And then he was, of course, his Uncle Aaron in Spider-Man Homecoming. And now we finally got to see that slightly realized. Hopefully we still get more. But the fact that we got to see that come to fruition was so cool.
Oh, it was unbelievable. Like, I literally, my first showing was just, it was so lame. I was the only one reacting to stuff. And you know how then when you're the only one reacting to stuff, you're kind of hesitant to be like yelling and doing all this crazy stuff, because I'm like, I don't want to ruin the experience for anybody else, but I want to freak out. Like, I'm freaking out. This is some crazy shit. Like, I want to go crazy. But like when he showed up, that was like the ultimate like Leo. I was like, oh shit. And nobody else like said anything. And then like last night in my second one, the packed out IMAX theater, everybody went crazy. But if I'm not mistaken, my biggest takeaway, I didn't notice this in the first one. I noticed last night in like Insomniac Spider-Man, Yuri, he said I caught him, right? Wasn't it, which one was it, him or was it somebody else that said I caught him? Because that was what stood out to me, that it wasn't like somebody from who would have caught him. And like, so that makes me, I'm like, wait, is that, like, he's credited on IMDb as MCU Aaron Davis. Like, so that is theoretically the same guy that Tom Holland interacted with. But if somebody else caught him, then it's like, wait, how does that, like, that was my biggest question coming out. I'm like, wait, how does that work? If somebody else caught him, has this, like, is this taking place way in the future? And like you were saying earlier with Insomniac, it's like maybe this is like way in the future, like set way after the games and all this other stuff, and like a bunch of and then we're in this era 10 years from now where all the Spider-Men just work together and just visit each other's universes and do all this crazy shit. And maybe that's just we see all the Spider-Men all the time. I mean, I feel like that's probably not going to happen, but there's just so much stuff that I'm like, how did they do this, like why? But it's not like in a bad way. I'm just like amazed. I'm just like amazed. So but Aaron Davis was incredible, and even though I worry that they're probably not going to do anything with that, I think that in my head, they asked Kevin Feige to throw him a bone. I mean, that's like the main like MCU connection in this movie, and they were like, "What can you give us to throw in this movie?" And he was like, "You can have Aaron Davis as the Prowler for 12 seconds." And they were like, "Yes!" And they all just went crazy. So even though nothing, the last time that Sony and the MCU tried to collab, Kevin Feige sent Venom right back to his own universe in a post-credit scene in the next movie. So I don't have the ultimate faith that they're gonna like come through on that and make it anything crazy, but it was still really cool to see.
So all of those villains in that room were displaced because they were floating through the multiverse, and so I do think the IMDb thing that just they get things wrong all the time, whether that was the MCU guy or not. But it is kind of a cool thing to theorize on, and so he was just, I don't remember who said who caught him. I'll try and catch that next time I watch, but he was definitely just displaced through the multiverse like the rest of the Vultures were and such. How cool would that be if Listen 3K brought this up in the Twitch chat of like the first DLC for Spider-Man 2 is a multiversal DLC, and it touches on things from Into the Spider-Verse. But also, what if Venom didn't get sent right back, right? So he got sent to the MCU. What if he's currently getting blasted all over the multiverse, and then Venom 3 will also be a multiversal story? And he's still just shooting around from place to place right now. Maybe he's going to have to fight a Spider-Man 2099. Maybe he's going to have to fight a Miles. Maybe he's going to have to fight Andrew Garfield's Spidey. Maybe he teams up with somebody. Who knows? Maybe it's Tom, etc., etc., etc. But I think the fact that it could even lead towards him being gone. Now this could just be coincidence. He was somewhere else, but we see Mrs. Chen from the Venom movies, and that was another one of my favorite cameos. And the fact that she was just like, "Nah, I've seen way wilder than you, Spot." But she didn't even like flinch to call Venom for help. Maybe could lead to the theory of he's somewhere else right now. He's off world. You're muted still.
Whoops, sorry about that. You have to talk to Laz yelling at my dog who was just over there going crazy. Anyway, I looked back and I found the message. It was Hobie that said I remember I texted the group chat about this as soon as I got out, and Aisha and Mark said they caught it as well. It was Hobie that said, like, I caught him. Yeah. In reference to the Prowler. So that makes me think, like, are we going to see a live-action Spider-Punk? Like, Daniel Kaluuya live-action Spider-Punk? Like, I mean...
I don't think it would be Daniel Kaluuya if we ever get live action, but if we did get a Spider-Punk in live action, I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. They just, man, they did so much. I got to be honest, I'm kind of vamping right now because I can't remember. I was so focused on finding out who caught the Prowler that I can't even remember what we were talking about beforehand. And then
That's okay. That's what this movie does. Is there's so many different Easter eggs and stuff. It's crazy. We're almost undoubtedly going to get through this pod. We've already been talking for an hour without covering absolutely everything. And that's actually one of the parts of the animation style that I loved. Is I don't know if I loved, because sometimes my ADHD was trying to look all over the place and they really had it focused in. But I did find that helped very much from a storytelling perspective, is they almost did like a camera zoom but in animation. You know how a lot of times it's like the thing you're zoomed in on in a camera, whether it's sports or something else, is very, very focused and then the background is blurred. It was like that, but in animation, where the main thing of the story that it was focused on was very detailed and everything else was still beautiful, but was zoomed out and it was blurred. And I did find that helped quite a bit to kind of help you know where to look with all of the craziness that was going on. before we give our official rating, before we give our kind of extended conclusion spiel, the last thing I want to talk about is some theories going on to Beyond the Spider-Verse. I love what Aaron brought up about he thinks we see Tom Holland in this next movie. I think we see Tom Holland in this next movie. He thinks we're gonna see a live action Miles Morales by the end. I think that could be very likely as well. Do we get a Spider Woman spinoff with Gwen Stacy coming up here? I could see it. I think that would be fantastic. And let's be honest, Haley Steinfeld sells tickets. I need to see 90s animated Spider-Man. I need to. That's something that I really, that's like my one hope for this. Funny enough, another person, maybe he was in there, but I didn't see him. My placeholder here for my mouse and keypad is Ultimate
yeah.
Spider-Man. I don't remember seeing him in there, but maybe he was. I'd love to see both of those. I'd love to see Lacey making a Spider-Verse appearance just like she does on the Agents of Fandom podcast. But I do think a Spider Carnage edition would be really cool. I would love if they tie this in with Venom. I would love if they tie this in with the video games. I think they have an opportunity here to build on this momentum and just create an amazing Spider universe. The Spider-Verse is something that's existed for so long, and Spider-Man is a character that is so much more popular than any superhero other than Batman. And so I think they have the opportunity here to really capitalize and make an incredible universe. Are there any theories you'd really either like to see come true that we've talked about or that we haven't touched on yet that you could see going into Beyond the Spider-Verse?
There's three things that I want. You kind of hit on a couple of them. I really want to see Tom. Like I feel like it's going to be not a waste or anything, but I'm going to be disappointed if we don't get if by the time this is all wrapped up, whether it's animation or live action, we don't get any version of Tom Holland. I don't know if they would do this because I don't know if it would conflict with the story, but I mean I feel like they could figure out a way to write it so it doesn't. I want to see PS5 Miles Morales. I want to see Najee Jeter in there to help. We see all these different variants of Spider-Man, and then we saw Spider-Man or Peter Parker from Spider-Man PS5. So it's like Miles is there. I mean, these two, depending on where this movie is set, like we were talking about, maybe it's way down in the future. I have no idea. But that's another thing I feel like there's a way that they can do that, and it's going to kind of be a missed opportunity if they don't. Like after having Yuri in this game, like I feel like we need, even if it's just, doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be just like this game or just like this movie. Just have him, maybe in the next one they're both standing there beside each other and they pan over to him and they give a wave. And it's like, that'd be fucking awesome. Like if you're going to put one of them in there, put both of them in there. And lastly, I really want to see the symbiotes included in some way. Like I know you said like Spider Carnage, that just sounds I know nothing about that. That sounds absolutely sick. You sent that picture, I was like, holy shit, that looks awesome. Like have Venom in there, have Null, just go crazy with it. Like I mean, the thing is like I don't feel like putting any shackles on them because I trust that they can take whatever they want and make it incredible. Like I'm not like well if they do that that could be too much or that could be bad because I think they could do whatever.
Adam, you, pardon me. You have inspired me because I was just thinking like I'm gonna make you a list of episodes you really should watch of Spider-Man the animated series from the 90s because it's top tier TV. They bring in the X-Men in some, they bring in the Punisher in one, they bring in the Fantastic Four, they bring in Captain America, Iron Man, and they use characters from the other animated series that were out in the 90s. And the series finale ends in the culmination of a big Spider-Verse event with multiple different Spider people. Daredevil is in it too, exactly as Damon says in chat. But maybe I should just write that up as an article for agentsfandom.com, some essential viewing from the Spider-Man 90s animated series. That would probably make a pretty good article as well. The other thing chat brought up that would be a hilarious idea is obviously the reason why we probably didn't see the Ultimate Spider-Man in this movie is because he's voiced by Drake Bell, and they're probably not going to call Drake Bell back to do some voice work. But have him be voiced by Josh Peck in the have the Ultimate Spider-Man come be voiced by Josh Peck, and that would be pretty funny way of doing things as well. If we did see a live action Miles at the end of this, I do think it'd be super interesting. I touched on this a little bit earlier with Aaron, but I didn't really expand. And it's like, yes, Sony could do their own thing with a live action Miles movie for sure, and he better get his own solo live action movie. He should realistically have that first. But with Peter Parker essentially having no friends right now and nobody knowing who he is in the MCU, they could set up a very cool Insomniac Spider-Man universe situation with the two Spider-Men in the same universe and having them be friends, and having where our first trilogy with Peter was him having a mentor in every movie, by his next trilogy have him being a mentor for Miles. I do think that would be a very cool route if they want to go for it. I almost think they won't do that because there'll be too much. They would at least wouldn't do that for a trilogy because there'd be too much money on the table to just give each of them their own movies and have both of them be almost $1 billion movies or over $1 billion movies. But that would be super cool to see as well. I think that does it for our Spider-Verse talk. I think we've covered at least most of the big things. Like, this was such a cinematic spectacle that I'm sure we missed multiple things, and I'm sure there's lots of things I didn't even see in my first viewing and you didn't see in your two that we still that we're still going to catch multiple times down the line. Make sure to follow Aaron Perrine, our wonderful guest from the first half of the show, on socials, at NightwingD on Instagram, at Summit Lake Hornet on Twitter, and make sure you check out the Phase Zero podcast as well, where he is one of the co-hosts. And on the Phase Zero YouTube page, you can find Aaron's amazing interviews from the red carpet, from the premiere of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And if you head to the Agents Fandom YouTube page and agentsfandom.com, not only will you find this podcast, but you will find our own wonderful red carpet interviews from our own wonderful creators at Agents of Fandom. For the premiere of The Little Mermaid, the Canadian premiere of Little Mermaid, Aisha got to talk to Jacob Tremblay. You can find that up there, as well as multiple different interviews from different shows, as well as the Canadian premiere of Guardians of the Galaxy, where Ryan got to talk to Sean Gunn and Chakudi Awuji. So make sure you check out the YouTube page to find that as well. And check out the Agents Fandom Podcast Network, and not just our pod, but all the other shows on there as well, including Listen 3K, the Fandom Academy podcast, Ticket to Reality, as well as our YouTube shows, The Critics and Damon's Comic Corner, where he's had some incredible guests lately, including Jed McKay and Kofi Outlaw from comicbook.com, I believe, is going to be the next one. That's coming up here on the next week as well. And we got my interview as well from Chip Zdarsky, who used to write Spider-Man, just finished up his Daredevil run, is currently writing Batman, up on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page and agentsfandom.com as well. Now that we're done all of the plugs, give me your rating out of 10. I think the Midnight Meter is copyrighted and we can't do it out of 12, which maybe would be a little bit easier for this one, but give me your rating out of 10 for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh, this feels like blasphemy, because the website, right? We got the 5-star. We got such a smooth 5-star run, but everybody in the chat seems to want 10. So I'm gonna go 9.6 out of 10 because I felt like 4.8 I'm taking off just a couple of points for the ending. That's just like a personal thing. It doesn't really work as much for me personally. I know a lot of people are really gonna enjoy it, but I feel like they could have wrapped it up a few minutes earlier. But that's only gonna take off 0.4 for me. Everything else I think it's perfect. 9.6.
I'm gonna go with a flat 9. My initial thought was an 8.5. My second thought was, well, for a part 1, this is basically a 9.5 or a 10. But I'm sticking with 9 because I just feel like there was something story-wise a little missing. Like, the ending itself, the immediacy of it, and the cliffhanger, leaving more of that with Miles' version of the Prowler for the third one, that really didn't bother me. But what I thought it could have used a little bit more of is, I just kind of feel like I saw most of the story in the trailer. Like, there weren't any extra moments that it was like, oh, I didn't know that it was about this. The trailer kind of misled me there. I feel like it was very straightforward, which isn't necessarily bad. But my favorite part of the trailer, and one of my favorite parts of the movie, is Miles going, everybody is telling me how I'm supposed to be Spider-Man, how I'm supposed to live my life, but nah, I'm gonna do me. And I just wanted to see that realized a little bit more. It was like, I'm gonna go do me, but now I'm in another universe and now I'm captured. And then when I see something ended on a cliffhanger, and I don't want to compare this to something like Infinity War and Endgame, because they were very clear when they named Avengers Endgame that this is not a part one and part two. These are two different movies and two different stories. This is a part one and part two, so it's a different thing. But when I get something like a big cliffhanger, I kind of like to feel like, how the hell are they going to get out of this? You know, like, I almost want something to ponder for the next 10 months until the next movie is out. What I'm pondering is, now I kind of even feel like, I don't want to sound like I'm being too negative here and harping on it, because this is a masterpiece of a movie and I loved it. But I don't really feel like, how is he going to get out of this? You know, my questions are, who are the other Spider people who is going to appear? What are the villains? Where are they going to take this story? But it's not, how's Miles going to get out of this situation? He could probably electrify himself out of those ropes and just break out. He was finding more info. He's got a full crew of Spider people that we know and love on their way to save him and get back to him. And so I'm not sitting here being like, Miles, what's gonna happen? You know, it's like, he's gonna be fine. But that's kind of like my one issue of where the story held me back. But all in all, this is a movie. This is a spectacular movie. It's like you said earlier, Adam. It's a work of art. It truly, truly is. It's a masterpiece. A bunch of people in chat talking right now. We didn't even talk about the score or the soundtrack, which were both fucking incredible. They were amazing. But there's just so many great parts of this movie that it didn't even really come up. It's so incredible. I can't wait for the third one. We are live on a Sunday night. If you want more Spider-Verse talk, I know the Listen 3K podcast is dropping their Spider-Verse review on a Monday. This will be on the podcast feeds Tuesday morning. We got so much Spider-Verse content, and the Spidey isn't ending anytime soon. We got tons of great articles up at agentsfandom.com, and there are more coming related to Spider-Verse still. They're not going to be stopping. And then in the fall, we still have Spider-Man 2 for PS5. So there's a lot more of this coming. We got a year or two at least straight of Spidey content coming our way. So make sure you stay tuned to agentsofandom.com for that. And next week, we got our Secret Invasion primer. Or maybe that's in 2 weeks. I don't know. I'm going to check out the schedule, and you're going to be listening to us anyways, because you love us and we love you. But we got Secret Invasion coming next. That's our next big thing that we are going to be covering, June 21st. That one hits Disney Plus only 2.5 weeks away. We're obviously excited for that one, but we're going to be back with lots of coverage here on the Agents Fandom podcast and on the website. So make sure you stay tuned, and make sure you follow our wonderful guest Aaron on the socials. Adam, what's yours? What are you on Twitter? Because I know it's different on the different ones, but Twitter is where you want the people to follow you.
People can find me on Twitter at AdamBlevins_, and then obviously follow Agents of Fandom on Twitter as well, and all the socials, and check out the website. We're doing a lot of awesome stuff, so check it out.
Check it out, exactly. You can find me at TJ_Zwarch5, ZWARYCH5 on all of the socials, and we will be back next week talking Secret Invasion and much other good stuff as well. On behalf of our wonderful co-host Garrett, who couldn't make it today, Adam, as well as Ruben behind the scenes, crushing it like always. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in, and we will see you next week. Peace.